Hello again, my friends. Today I'd like to try something a little different, and I'm going to be asking you guys to help me out with the project I'm busy with. Alright, so as many people know, I'm busy writing a book. It's a book about religion, but from a non-believer's perspective. It didn't start off as that. It started off originally, I was going to write a book just about religion because I was passionate about religion, all religions, even though I was a staunch Christian. I wanted to find out, where did religion come from originally? What was the very first spark of religion that started the whole thing, that branched out into all these different religions? And at the time that I started this, I was still a Christian. It was during my research for that book. I hadn't even started writing it. It was during the research phase of the book that I found the possibility of God, specifically the Christian God, not existing. Literally within 2 hours I was an atheist. As far as the other gods were concerned, that took a little longer. It took more research, more understanding, but I eventually found out that none of them exist. Anyway, so back to the book. What I would ideally like is as much comments from you guys as possible. I'm going to read a portion of the first chapter, and I would very much like it if you could have a listen to it, see if it follows, see if it raises questions, see if it's interesting, see if it makes you want to know more. If there's anything I've left out or something that I have not noticed or something, please drop a comment in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys. You know I do respond to virtually all comments, and I'd love as much input about this book as possible. Okay, so the title of the book, I think I've got a really good title. I don't want to say what it is right now because I would hate for somebody to use it before I get a chance to use it. But the subtitle of the book is going to be the same as what the description of this channel has always been. And that is sorting through superstition and myths to find fact. Which is exactly what I want to do. That's the whole purpose I do these videos, and the purpose behind the book. I want to find the facts, get rid of all the myth and superstition. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read, it's the second draft of the book. It's not the final one. I'm still going to do a lot of editing and I'll probably put in some things and take some stuff out. It is the second draft, so it is fairly far advanced. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read it. I'm going to put the text on the screen so that you don't see the top of my head the whole time while I'm reading. And you can follow along. So you can either listen to it while you're driving, or you can just read it if you're in a place while the text is scrolling that you don't have to hear my voice. But please, I would love to get some input from you guys. Chapter 1. Does God exist? I grew up believing in God. I mean, who didn't? It was obvious there was a God. All the stuff couldn't just come from nothing. It couldn't just create itself. Seriously, look at the trees, the butterflies, the rainbows. If God didn't create all this, then who did? It wasn't until I removed my God glasses, did some research, spoke to and listened to many in the secular community that I began to realize what was wrong with the view I previously held. Hopefully by the end of this book, you too will be able to take an unshackled approach to the possibilities. Possibilities that make a lot more sense than magic did it. So, does God exist? This at first glance appears to be a very simple, straightforward question. But is it? Clearly, though not obviously to me throughout my life, the first point of clarification would be, which God? Yes, like the vast majority of Christians, of which I was one for the longest time, there was only one God. You know God, the creator of the universe, the one who made everything, including all of us, that one, the Christian God. I was brought up believing there was only one God, and all the others I had heard about, Allah, Krishna, and Buddha, were all false gods. Zeus, Odin, and Apollo were simply made-up fiction. To me, there was a distinction between false gods and mythical gods, and mine was neither. He was the true living God. How wrong I was. If you were to ask a Christian who is the true God, the answer would be obvious: God. If, however, you were to ask a Muslim the same question, their answer too would be obvious: Allah. For the Hindus it would be Shiva, for the Sikhs Akal Murat, for the Zoroastrians Ahura Mazda, and for the ancient Greeks Zeus. The group you belong to is an accident of geography and time. If you were born in the USA, you would probably be Christian. If you were born in Iran, probably Muslim. And in the Punjab state of India, in all likelihood a Sikh. We know that religions come and go over time, and many religions that were taken as seriously as Christianity, Islam and Judaism, just to name their Abrahamic religions, were taken just as seriously by adherents in the past. The Mayan civilization, which flourished in South America from about 2000 BC until the 17th century AD, took their worship very seriously. Their offerings to the gods included removing the still beating hearts from the living human bodies as sacrifice. The ancient Greeks worshipped Zeus from before the 5000 BC, and the Egyptian god Amun was worshipped as early as the 21st century BC. Not only is what you believe dictated by where you were born, but just as importantly when you were born. If you had been born in Egypt 3,000 years ago, for example, you would not be worshipping Allah. This raises an interesting notion. Why would you not be worshipping Allah if you were born 3,000 years ago? Even if you were born in Mesopotamia, the area that now incorporates Iran, where Allah would be worshipped today. Quite simply, Allah hadn't been born yet. Similarly, no one would be worshipping Yahweh, the God of the Christians. This deity hadn't been conceived of yet either. Yahweh would only come into existence many centuries later. We'll take a detailed look at the emergence of this God in a little while, but before we do that, we need to understand a few other things relevant to the necessity of gods, as well as some of the gods who have come and gone over the history of mankind. Over the many centuries, man has worshipped a great variety of gods spanning many civilizations. Some of the gods were lesser known and only worshipped among a small band of believers. Some were the leaders of great pantheons with a vast number of demigods, while others grew in legend to become the catalyst for some of the greatest religions in the history of the world. So which one is right? Is there a right one? We are fairly confident that the vast majority of the gods that were worshipped throughout the history of man have been identified as fictitious. There are very few people today that would accept Zeus, Odin or Quetzalcoatl as real. Yet they were worshipped as living gods at the time. Today, Yahweh and Allah, among many others, are worshipped as the living God. Are they any more real? Considering all these gods from history that we now accept as myth, why did man feel the need to worship anything? Human beings, as with many other animals, have an innate need for a caregiver figure. Before a baby is born, it is aware of this being from which it must get all its care and nurture of both a physical and emotional type. This is hardwired into the brain in its developmental stage. When it is born, it discards that abstract idea after meeting and interacting with its mother. But that hardwired concept of needing to connect with a powerful, although unseen, being remains prevalent in the brain. When the need arises, when we feel lonely, afraid, or injured, or in distress, we automatically understand that this, as yet unseen, loving, nurturing, caring being will intervene on our behalf. The worship of a god was essentially born out of fear and ignorance of the world in which primitive man found himself. The world in which early man dwelt is a frightening place filled with far too many unexplained phenomena. It must have seemed as if the hostile world he inhabited was trying to kill him. Earthquakes, volcanoes, gale-force winds, oceans with awe-inspiring power, lightning, thunder, torrential rain and hailstones, among many other natural occurrences. The earth seemed to get angry from time to time. More specifically, nature seemed to get angry from time to time. It made no sense really that the earth itself was angry. There was obviously a community of incredibly powerful unseen creatures that used nature to show their displeasure with the people living on the land. Appeasing the creatures would surely minimize their anger toward man. The god of rain emerged, who could be appealed to when withholding the rain and appeased when angrily flooding the land. The god of the ocean emerged and would be worshipped before a sea voyage was undertaken for safe passage across its waters. Other gods also emerged, covering all aspects of life. A god of love was worshipped when struggling to find a suitable companion. A god of fertility was worshipped when starting a family. A god of war before going into battle. A god of agriculture for a good harvest. A god of travel for those undertaking a journey. A god of the sun. A god of the moon, of wind, of medicine, of justice, of wisdom, and of the arts. Any aspect of life man thought could be improved by some form of external powerful providence was done by inventing a deity for this purpose. Thousands of these gods were conceived of. The concept of God was also forced onto man as a means of control. In the early years of mankind, hunter-gatherer societies were very small, protective and inclusive. Mutual cooperation and the need for trust were imperative to the well-being of the society. The survival of the group as well as the individual depended on it. 6 million years ago, these societies were small bands of people numbering only in the tens. From 100,000 to 10,000 years ago, they were still called bands, but the numbers now swelled in some instances to the hundreds of members. In these close-knit communities, everyone knew everyone else and had to rely on each other. Anyone who threatened the group's stability found themselves expelled from the group. Being a part of the group was critical to survival, and people soon realized acting contrary to the well-being of the group or any individual of the group would put their well-being at risk. People relied on the interaction with and integrity of their fellow clan members to keep them honest. As clan size grew, this system became unsustainable. 10,000 to 5,000 years ago, tribes were formed which could number in the thousands. Up to 4,000 years ago, tribes became chiefdoms which numbered in the 10,000s. 3,000 years ago, as the number swelled into the 100,000s, the chiefdoms became states. States became empires, and as the numbers in the groups ballooned into the millions. Somewhere along the stages of evolution of groups of communities, from the earliest small bands and tribes to the later much larger chiefdoms and states, two concepts were introduced as a form of mass control, as people lost personal touch with one another across the group. The first of these was the establishment of laws governing the group. Punishment of the contravention of these laws was used to ensure cooperation. This, however, was wholly insufficient, and there was always the fear that those contravening the rules governing the group would realize they could break the rules while no one was watching. This brought about the second of the concepts, an all-seeing, all-knowing, omnipresent, invisible agent who knew even your thoughts and whose justice you couldn't escape. You could possibly escape the punishment of man, but never that of a divine deity. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. That is only a small section of the first chapter. If you'd like to hear more, I would be happy to put it out there to get more feedback, more ideas from you. But please leave a couple of comments. And as usual, if you have already subscribed, please share it with somebody who hasn't. Keep well, my friends, and thank you. Bye-bye.